talked about deferring the minutes. So we can go ahead and get started since we're
sorry
about three
on YouTube.
About 3 past the hour here. So if everyone's okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:03 here. And I would like to start with an invocation by asking for a moment of silence, especially for those I know that I have some friends who went to Mississippi State, and Mike Leach, unfortunately, their football coach, passed away. So I'd like to offer a moment of silence for the committee, if you don't mind. Thank you. At the request of the clerk's office, the minutes are still being recorded, so that item will be deferred, if that's okay. Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to defer those, or can it be deferred at my discretion?
I think it can just be deferred at your discretion. I mean, it's up to you if you want to vote to defer them, but it's not necessary.
I would ask unanimous consent that we defer that item until the clerk's office has had a chance to transcribe those minutes. All right, without objection, that's so ordered. So we are moving into the discussion regarding the proposed updates to the Code of Ordinances for the city of Charleston. Did everyone get a chance to review the revision that was included in the packet? Okay, with that, I will open it up for discussion if there is any.
This is just what we talked about, isn't it?
It is from the last committee meeting. So it looked good to me when I reviewed that, and so I'd ask if there's any if we miss anything for the other members of the committee on it to come forward if you desire.
And I know Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Waring isn't on the call, but I think he had some remarks. Because there was discussion at the previous meeting about having a 2-week waiting period. And I don't know if there is a consensus about that. So that's not in the version that y'all received. So if that's something y'all wanted to discuss, actually, he's joining now.
Okay, we can wait for Councilmember Waring.
He may bring that up, but I wasn't sure if that was something y'all still wanted to take up. So what y'all received doesn't include that, because I think there was some question about, I'm not sure that there is a consensus at our previous meeting on that.
Okay. So I would ask Councilmember Waring, just to bring you up to speed. Did you get to hear everything that Jennifer said?
Councilmember Waring, this is Jennifer. The chair opened it up for discussion regarding the changes that were sent to the commission. I had mentioned that.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. That you had some changes or questions that you may want to discuss regarding the discussion we had at the previous meeting about the 2-week waiting period.
And Councilmember Bowden, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I thought this generally reflected what we had talked about, except for the point Jennifer just made.
So, Councilmember Waring, do you want to discuss the 2-week waiting period that we had talked about? If my memory serves, we had talked about, because the Planning Commission, anything that kind of goes before them had 30 days. We had talked about anything that would be a council generated ordinance would kind of have the 2-week, for lack of a better term,
hear me?
Off period. No, go ahead, Councilman.
Can you hear Councilman Brady?
Yes, I think Councilmember Waring's audio.
Can't hear Councilman Brady. He's not on mute, so.
I
Let
can
me try close out and come back in.
Okay, we can pause. Mayor Teckenberg, if you'll give us a second to let Councilmember Waring
okay.
fix his audio issue, that'd be great.
Okay, great.
I've had that happen as well, where I sign in and can't hear anything.
And Mr. Chairman, I think he signed on and dropped off. So I didn't know if you wanted to go to anyone else.
I'd prefer to wait just a minute, since I know that this was an issue that he had brought up. And Madam Clerk, just so we can keep this moving, it's 5:09 by my count. If he's not on by 5:11, we'll proceed with the discussion of the item.
And it looks like he's signing back on now.
Can you hear me, Councilmember Waring?
Still can't hear. Councilman. Can you hear me, Councilman Brady? Wow.
Can you hear me,
I
Councilman?
got it. It's on. As soon as you spoke,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, it kicked in.
So Councilor
about
Waring, as I had mentioned, the item before us did not include the 2-week, for lack of a better term, cooling off period. So to my recollection, we had discussed that and wanted to open it up to you to discuss the item that we had talked about with the kind of the waiting period, because that is something in the flow of items to the council agenda that Planning Commission has. But we were kind of discussing the idea that for a council generated ordinance that would be coming before council, we had wanted to give time to review, if my memory serves.
Listen, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilman Bowden. I thank him for bringing this forward. I agree with that one. Certainly came too quick. We met on community development on a Thursday, and Tuesday it was in front of full council, and we need more time. There's no doubt about that. So I brought up the issue about planning because it's 30 days on a zoning, but the problem is I wouldn't want the mundane things to get caught up in waiting 30 days. So, but your piece with it being generated from by council or generated by a standing committee of council, maybe that could be a pathway forward. I don't know. If it's 2 weeks, as you said, I doubt that unless it's some kind of, and if it's really that much of an emergency, I mean, we really can call an emergency meeting. So,
So the only issue that I see is when we meet in the summer and we have 30 days in between meetings. But if we did include something in the ordinance about a 2-week waiting period, it would not preclude the mayor's office from including it on the next agenda. So in the summer, it could get a little squirrely in June, July, and August. But the rest of the year, we're meeting every 2 weeks. And then sometimes, obviously, depending on the timing, it's 3 weeks. But that does not preclude the mayor's office from placing items on the agenda. So, I would be in favor of the 2-week waiting period. I agree with you, especially when if it's and this would only apply if it is a council generated ordinance. So this is not anything that would come from the mayor's office to be included, because with that coming out, obviously it's included on the agenda packets that we get and whatnot, but something that requires debate at a standing committee, I don't think waiting 2 weeks. And I don't mean this pejoratively, but we are not the world's greatest deliberative body. We're not the United States Senate, to their credit. So I don't think it hurts us to allow council members to review, to have time to review items that would be coming when it's from the body of the whole. So
I think you got to figure it out. I agree with the 2-week waiting period. I actually think during the summertime, and Madam Clerk may be able to answer this, with something like community development in the summertime, do they also meet once a month, or do they meet every 2 weeks?
So community development right now is only meeting once a month. So the issue isn't the committee meetings during the summer, it's the council meetings, because they go from meeting twice a month to once a month. So
okay.
But
so most standing committee meetings, I think we meet during the summer once a month. So public safety, everybody else. Well, I mean, that 2 weeks works out great. I think you got to figure it out. I'll vote for that, basically.
And so just to add, Mr. Chairman, legal actually did prepare a draft ordinance where we had added a paragraph in that addressed that. And I was not sure if there is a consensus. So legal actually did include that. I just was not sure based on the last meeting if that's the direction the committee wanted to go, just because you don't want to keep someone, if they have an ordinance that's very important to them, you don't want to get it held up, especially during the summertime. So, because you can always defer it. So, but we can add that back in if that's the consensus of the committee.
Yep. Well, I would like to go to Mayor Tecklenburg, because I know he had his hand up prior to Councilmember Waring rejoining. So I'd like to go to him, and then anyone else that has comments on this matter. So I see Mayor Tecklenburg and then Councilmember Saccharin.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe this is being a little picky, but I just didn't want it to get misinterpreted. But we're about the middle of the paragraph. It says that the standing committee's action on the proposed ordinance will be reported out to City Council at the subsequent City Council meeting, where City Council will have the option given the first reading. So I didn't want to, so if there, for example, if it was a complicated matter that a council member brought up and majority of council then directed staff to draft the proposed ordinance, it might take a little while for even that to occur, and then it would go to the standing committee, right? And then they would vote to send it to back to City Council. By using the word subsequent City Council, I didn't want to infer or have the expectation that a council member brings up any matter that gets a majority to move forward with the thought that it's going to be back at the next City Council meeting. You follow me?
Right.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of semantics. I don't think that was anybody's intent, but it just, you might interpret it that way, and I didn't want to raise that expectation.
So is your suggestion then that what language would you propose? Legal had obviously mentioned the 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks or until the next council meeting? And that would cover the summers, because obviously we're not meeting every 2 weeks in the summer.
I don't know that I had a proposed solution. I just wanted to raise the issue, and maybe Magali or someone could, maybe you don't even use, I'm not quite sure.
Would legal like to weigh in?
I'm just looking at the language now, and I think that maybe, let's see, standing committee's action on the proposed ordinance will be reported out to city council at the subsequent city council meeting. I do see what the mayor is concerned about here. I think that we could maybe add some elective language or build in that 2 weeks, as you just mentioned, Councilmember Brady, in that section right there, if that's the pleasure of the committee.
Yeah, I think we can add something around like, essentially the subsequent council meeting, or, around like 2 weeks shall pass, and or the subsequent council meeting, whichever is longer, or something to that effect.
Yeah,
and then that way it covers the summer. Obviously, I am not a lawyer and did not go to law school, so I would leave it to our esteemed attorneys, including Councilmember Bowden, who is also an attorney sitting on the committee, to weigh in on the language.
Can we see that version that had the 2 week period built in?
Yeah, I can screen share it. Let me see if I can find it.
Mr. Chairman, I just
Councilmember
went
Ware.
up the word subsequent, maybe clouding the piece. I mean, because subsequent, does that mean next? That's how that was the issue to begin with. Committee met on Thursday, and Tuesday was in front of everybody.
My thought was, if we said 2 weeks or until the subsequent council meeting, whichever is longer, it gives us the opportunity in the summer where it's 30 days, which is the subsequent, because that is longer. But otherwise, it shall be 2 weeks. That was kind of the thought.
Well, when you say 2 weeks, that kind of takes out the next meeting, right? Whether it's 30 days or not,
Well, the 2 weeks would give us the time in between, because I mean we do meet every 2 weeks unless there is a 3 week gap, which occasionally happens in weeks in which there's 5 Tuesdays, or months in which there's 5 Tuesdays, right?
You're right. And then sometimes we adjust it for holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. You're
right. But that's why subsequent, whichever is longer. So if there's 3 weeks in between council, it would be 3 weeks, because that is longer than the 2 weeks.
But what you just said, whichever is longer, that takes care of it also.
That was my thought.
2 weeks, whichever is longer.
So can everybody see my screen? I can't.
I can.
Unfortunately. So it's a little different. So the title is a little different. We needed to tweak that because the title makes it sound like it's only applying to ordinances proposed by council members. And this section actually addresses all ordinances, not just the ones that are addressed by, or not just the ones that are proposed by council members. But this is what was initially sent. And so the sections are we switched one of these and put these at the bottom, but I think the one you're looking for is B, which is that any proposed ordinance originating from a standing committee or appointed board or commission shall be presented to council for first reading at the regularly scheduled meeting after a 2 week review period. This subsection does not apply to ordinances generated from the Ways and Means Committee, ordinances proposed by city staff, or any emergency ordinance. So then it would just be to put that ordinance back in and then just take the word, tweak the language in section A regarding the subsequent city council meeting.
So in proposed subsection C of the ordinance, that not this one that you've got, Jennifer, but the one that's up for consideration, we would modify that to read, the standing committee's action on the proposed ordinance will be reported out to city council in 2 weeks in 2 week or at the regularly scheduled meeting after a 2-week period review period.
I wonder if we could just combine B and A.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, Madam Clerk. And so it would, at least in my mind, it would be after a 2-week review period or the subsequent city council meeting, whichever is later. Does that make sense? Because in the months in which we have 5 Tuesdays, there are occasionally periods in which it might be 3 weeks, and then in the summer it might be 4 weeks. So the idea would be to give the longest waiting period the priority.
And you know, the one concern I have is, I think what the mayor raised is that if it's a complicated ordinance, it may not be prepared in time for the subsequent city council meeting. And could and prior to that third sentence, the standing committee, could you say something? Once prepared by staff, the standing committee's action on the proposed ordinance will be reported out at the subsequent, and go and follow that, so that you give staff the time. If it's complicated, the easy ones they can do quickly, but a complicated one might be more difficult. Does that make any sense?
Yep. No, I think that makes sense. So once staff has prepared it, you have the 2-week review period, and or I should say at the subsequent city council meeting, whichever is longer. Because again, it can be 3 weeks, and then in the summer it could be 4 weeks. But it gives everyone the ability to really review it, as opposed to what we were running into, where in many instances we were having only 2 or 3 days, and in some instances day of, right, where there were meetings being held on the same day as council, and then it was coming on the council agenda on council member proposed actions. And I would just reiterate again, this is only on council member proposed ordinances. This is not in any way taking away from the executive office's prerogative to place an ordinance on the agenda.
I agree.
Okay, and for legal, does that make sense?
Yes, so let me just read it back and make sure that this is the proposed language that we'd like to modify. The standing committee's action on the proposed ordinance will be reported out to city council after a 2-week review period or the subsequent city council meeting, whichever date shall be the later of the two.
After staff has prepared it, I think was what the discussion was around.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
discuss
Councilmember
that
Ray.
one with you. I agree with the part about after staff has prepared it, but just wondering whether that's putting staff in a little bit of a bullseye. I mean, when legal comes to us and say they need more time, I've never really seen where, the mayor or council member says, well, that's an issue. In most cases, we're very understanding when legal is. We all know they overwork, So I mean, is that really necessary? Rick, I understand your point, but I mean, I'm finishing up my 11th year. I've never seen a situation where legal said they needed more time, and anybody did a backflip because legal needed more time.
I think at least this is just in my humble opinion, what I don't want to get kind of caught in is that a subsequent council, obviously, because the code of ordinances lives forever. Yes, they can read the verbatim minutes, and they can also go back and view our debate here. But I think we want to make the language as clear as possible for subsequent councils when we may all not be on it. Because the great thing about laws is that we write them down.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
but
want to make
for
sure that,
example, sometimes you get staff. I mean, somebody could be out sick. Somebody could be on family leave, medical leave, which reduces the staff that'll be able to write this. I think that kind of goes without saying it.
well,
Some of the staff
and
can make
council
it
also
work.
reserves the right that should staff not be able to prepare it, we can also defer it. If that is the will of council, and that prerogative is not being taken away, I don't think, by that language.
Okay.
I think you're right, Councilman Waring. I think I was probably being overly protective because if you
Yeah.
read that third sentence, you don't actually act on anything until you have a proposed ordinance.
Right.
So I think it gives the staff the time to draft it in a way to present it to the standing committee.
Yeah. Like, tend to be pretty reasonable with one another.
And to that point, Councilman Waring, I was just having this discussion the other day where, for once, we were actually being lauded that Charleston City Council, unlike some other governing bodies, we do tend to have very transparent and open discussions on the floor, which was we were applauded for that. So, I don't want to take that away either.
I agree. I tell you what, I really felt good when I think it was something similar to that on what I think you're talking about Johns Island and creating that district on Johns Island. You're right. Many other groups probably would have gone in some smoke-filled room. We did do it on the floor.
That's right. So I would like to ask then, I will entertain a motion if a member of the committee will so designate that we recommend moving forward with the amended language that we have just put forward.
So moved as amended.
Second, as amended.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That concludes what we originally had on the agenda, but I would like to open it up since we do need to adopt the code of ordinances, especially in regards to rules of council, by the second meeting in January. I'd like to open it up if there were anything else in this particular section of the code that any council member or committee member would like to discuss. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Chair. If you could just give me a refresher, do we have anything in the current change in this ordinance regarding exigent circumstances where a council member could, essentially circumnavigate the system that we've already created? Is there a way for the mayor or a council member to get something on the agenda in kind of extreme circumstances?
So my understanding, and this is what we were trying to make sure did not get interrupted. The mayor's office may place as part of the executive prerogative any item on the agenda. So any council member can go to the mayor's office and ask that it be placed on the agenda. But obviously, the mayor reserves the right in terms of controlling the agenda that comes to council, the right to not place it should they so choose. And so that would be one way. But I do not believe at this time that we have included anything that would, if you look at the United States House of Representatives or the Senate, something similar to a discharge petition, which is how the Senate would circumnavigate the majority leader's discretion to control the agenda. I do not believe that is currently under consideration.
Let me ask this. You talking about an ordinance or
Like,
you talking about placing something on the agenda?
Councilmember Waring, I believe Councilmember Saccharin wanted to follow up, and then I'll come to you.
Okay. All right, good.
Thanks, Councilman Waring, and thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I was talking about an ordinance, some that we felt added quickly. While this process is outlined, I just wanted to know if there was a mechanism in place that we would create. It sounds like there is no mechanism at this point.
All right, Councilmember Waring.
Well, as I understood this ordinance, I thought this is something that's going to be generated from a standing committee. So I don't think it As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm gonna bring up here, I brought up earlier, it was either in the June or July or September meeting, was the appointment of the standing committees of council. Right now, the mayor appoints all those positions without input from council. And as a matter of fact, I called clerk of council earlier, not too long ago before this meeting, and asked to place on the agenda to amend section 249 to where the mayor recommends or advises with the consent of council, just like we do with the planning commission, or we do with the BZA or the BAR. Every major committee within the city, council has input on, except the ones we serve on. And I think that's an omission. That was something that was given to Mayor Rowley, I think, after Hugo. But, and Councilman Mitchell can tell you about that. But it never was like that prior. And even if it was, we should have say-so on the committees that we serve. It's not whether somebody's doing a good job or a better job. Just on the transparency. The way it was done in the past, Mayor Tecklenburg, actually Mayor Rowley would bring us in, in small groups and discuss those appointments prior to, them hitting our desk at the first or second meeting of council. We got a very talented council, and some people want their talents displayed in other areas and should have the opportunity to say so before it's been cast, so to speak. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, thank you, Councilmember. Would legal like to weigh in on this?
I was just going to note, and Julia provided me some of this information sort of anecdotally, that is a process that Isle of Palms has adopted. And from what I understand, that's done by ballot, and it is a very time consuming process and not effective. So in terms of, how quickly it's able to get done and prolongs the process, et cetera. So for what that's worth.
Is there any way to, and Mayor Tecklenburg, I would ask you to weigh in on this as well. Is there any way to allow for, because obviously we all have discussions, with you beforehand about where people can best serve. Is there any way to, ask for a review period to be included, so that there is, council can obviously vote, and I don't think it, and legal can correct me, I don't think it has to receive 3 readings. So it would just be something that could be adopted, within the first month of the new calendar year. But I do like Councilmember Waring the idea of council consenting to it, but I'm also willing to weigh as well that we don't want to have a prolonged fight on the floor where you may have committees that are going without chairs and or positions filled for months at a time while people are debating whether someone should be the chair or someone should be the vice chair, or whether another council member should even get to serve on that committee. I think that might be injecting a wedge into the process where there might not otherwise be one. Yes, Councilmember Waring.
Let me bring up another point. We don't work for the mayor. We work with the mayor. Okay, we elected collectively by the same people. We actually work for the constituents. Okay, that's who I work for when I come to this council. So again, I think we may be making a mountain out of molehill when you think about it. We can have say-so in every other committee the city has, but for the ones we serve on. I mean, why does that make sense? And from the standpoint of serving with our chairpersons, obviously, if it becomes a wedge, let's take the worst case scenario, you already have chairs in place. So the existing chairs would continue to serve, or the existing members would continue to serve. I don't really see it being that kind of tug of war. I guess, somebody can paint that picture, but it's never been a tug of war with the Planning Commission, the BZA, the BAR, I mean, the History Commission, you go on. And truthfully, we know one another a whole lot better than some of the people we vote on those planning commissions and the BAR and the like. So as far as the 13 people around the table being familiar with the skill sets of who we appoint to a lot of these committees throughout the city, we certainly know ours best. So,
Mayor Theckenberg, did I see your hand?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I may just make a few observations or remembrances here. I do try, it's a balancing act, by the way.
it is.
Because there's only so many committees and so many committee chairmen, and to distribute that in a way, what I try to do is to the best use of everyone's experience and expertise to the good of our city. I certainly try on a one-on-one basis to and the phone's right here. It's anybody want to call me to make a request or a suggestion, the line is open. And particularly when someone gets newly elected to council, when I meet with them one-on-one, I try to seek out what they're interested in and what their what their interests are, because that drives the best involvement. I also, try to keep some diversity on our committees. I don't know. I think I've done a reasonable job of that. I do. I hear you, Councilmember Waring, that we're pretty collegial and get along. I mean, the whole council. I mean, you do kind of open up the situation where you get a popular committee, somebody else wants to be the chairman, and you have a floor fight over, who gets elected to be chairman of what committee and where does that stop. And, council might not always be so collegial. And honestly, I don't always agree with every council member on everything, but I always try to put the best interests of our city at heart when I do this balancing act. So anyway, that's just my perspective on it.
Councilmember Waring.
Yeah. I don't really want, this isn't anything of personal attack on you, Mr. Mayor. It's about process. It's about transparency, and it's about input. I think, again, council should have a say, and to say that we don't, I think is incorrect. Now we can have a say on every other committee, but we cannot have a say on the committees that we serve on. Why? It had nothing to do with you. It's about the process. The process, in my opinion, needs to be amended. And I'm not the only one with that opinion. So what that would do, frankly, is have more conversations before. Let's put it like this: while we're going through the budget process, one of the things you put in place created more transparency with the budget process than any, I can't say that any mayor in the history, because I don't know, we had a lot of mayors, but I know one thing, far more transparency than it was under Mayor Rowley. And I'll say that in the biggest microphone we have. And I still think that process that you have put in place when it comes to the budget has been improved because it draws on the talent around the table and in the room. At the end of the day, it's still your budget though, okay? We put input, we recommend, but when it comes forward to council, it is not the ad hoc committee budget, it's the mayor's budget coming forward to council. Nobody's trying to change that. But that collective input should also be a part of the standing committees in which we serve upon. That's why I'm saying it had nothing to do with the quality of your job suggestions. It's
Right.
just, again, when you say, listen, some of the employees on this staff, for whatever reason, we got we live in a right to work state. You can terminate them. You cannot terminate council members because we don't work for you. We don't work for any mayor. We work with the mayor, and that's the environment that, normally you probably, I guess you haven't heard it, but normally after the appointment of the committees, after that, you got council members mumbling to one another, going out the room, why I'm not on this committee, why I'm not on that committee. I've said, you should go talk to the mayor. Apparently, I don't know whether that's happened or not, because I never follow up. But it would serve, I think, better to have those conversations, I don't know, anywhere between November and December. And by the time January comes, those committees are set. So to go for it. And if in the worst case scenario, you can't decide on collectively chairpersons, then the ones in place will stand.
Well, thank you, Councilmember. And I saw Councilmember Saccharin's hand up, so I want to
Sure.
make sure I acknowledge him as well.
Sure.
Still on mute.
Mm.
There we go.
There we go.
So, Councilman Waring, are you proposing or suggesting, just for conversation, that we would have a floor vote to determine who is on the standing committees, or just for the chairs and vice chairs?
I think when that process starts, what I'm hopeful of, it encourages more conversation between the mayor and the members of council, and all 12 members of council. I understand the piece with when new people come and certainly onto the committee, but I think you just have more of a collective conversation. We certainly, listen, we have a collective conversation on almost a $300 million budget right now that we're getting ready to vote on, and that has worked well. I'd recommend that to any city. They probably won't listen to me, but I'm telling you, it's worked extremely well here. What used to happen in the past for you all, we would come in to Mayor Raleigh, and then most council members would have little pet issues in their districts that they wanted funded. And then that's what we would discuss, okay? I'll give an example. Higgins Pier, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gregory had proposed, he was representing Ashleyville at the time, and he needed roughly about $700,000 for that. And a couple of years running, Mayor Raleigh, for whatever reason, didn't have the money to do it. I'll put it like this. I got on council and that was shared with me. And I said, well, no, we just need to go in and talk to Mayor Raleigh, the importance of it. And of course that happened, and it was in the budget. And not only that, that was one of the first times that tourism dollars came west of the Ashland. Prior to that, for 20 years, 100% of the hospitality taxes and the accommodation taxes stayed on the peninsula, and they boldly told us because tourists don't come West Ashland. Obviously that changed. That process of going in with Mayor Raleigh, it was I never had problems with it. Some people didn't want to do it, but maybe I'm just, finances is my thing. Remember when you put me on I think the History Commission or something like that, and I tell you that's not my area, Mayor Tecklenburg. That's really not my area. I mean, I don't think I'm good at that. So I have to listen when it comes to history. So when it comes to, we have, I think, done extremely well because of the transparency that we have on this council. And it's just a continuation of that. So nothing personal. It really isn't personal. It's just, I think, a better process.
So, Councilman Waring, if I had to restate, your suggestion would be that we include language around that the mayor shall appoint the standing committee chairs and vice chairs or shall recommend to council the standing committee chairs and vice chairs for its organization at, we could say, or by the second meeting in January for council's adoption or something to that effect.
That's right. In other words, the mayor still leads the process. He still recommends the chair. He still recommends the composition of the committee. But for example, when he comes to that decision, probably gonna pick up the phone and talk to some of us, as opposed to us waiting for it to be,
And
put on our
and we
desk.
could include language around shall determine ad hoc committees as determined from time to time or something
Right.
to that effect as well, which
Right.
is really just giving, if I had to say, solidification to the process that's already somewhat in place. But again, so that future councils have it written down on what the process could be. And I'd like to open it up to the committee for discussion around Councilmember Waring's proposal. Councilmember Belden.
And then, so if we go through that process and we get recommendations from the mayor and council disagrees, then the committees just stay in place as they already were.
They disagree. Well, yeah. In other words, no consensus is arrived at. If no consensus is arrived at, obviously, it will stay as they were until somebody gets replaced. If you didn't get reelected, then the committee, or I didn't get reelected, obviously the committees that I serve on, somebody's going to have to come there. The person that won is going to have to be assigned someplace, maybe not that committee. But again, the mayor leads the process. We shouldn't have to wait until the second meeting of January to find out what committees we will or won't serve on. We should know that. We should know that before long.
Well, I think Councilmember Waring, to my point, though, it was that that would be the latest point in the process, because obviously the mayor's office reserves the prerogative to Mayor Tecklenburg's point, pick up the phone and call and start talking to people.
Right.
But that you don't want the process to be held up indefinitely. So I think it's important to put a timestamp on when that would last chance have to come forward to council. If it comes forward earlier for the organization of council, I think that's fine. But I think it is important that if we were going to proceed with this, that we put a timestamp that at the latest that it could come forward for council's organization.
I agree with you on that. As a matter of fact, all I'm trying to do is, I guess, in part, encourage conversations prior to it being placed on our desk at the second meeting in January. So, because if there are any disagreements, you got time to kind of work through that. So, without it really being a big issue.
So I would ask legal, the proposed language, is that something, because I'm not currently looking at the ordinance in front of me, is that something that could be considered at our next rules committee meeting for consideration?
Yeah, we would need a little time to look at it, but we could probably put that for next meeting.
Now, let me say this. Our rules well, let me raise my hand.
Yeah, yes, Councilman Waring.
When do we have our first meeting? Wasn't it June?
Mayor Tecklenburg, I see you.
They have a first meeting in June. Then we had another meeting in September, and now we got another meeting in toward the end of the year here. It kind of takes too long to get some of this stuff in effect with the ad hoc process. Doing it this way, we won't have any input on that for the second meeting in January 23. I mean, I think I brought this up when we had our first meeting in June, and now we are in January with something that's going to take even longer. It's going to go into 23. That's why I put it on the agenda, because I thought we would have already worked through this in almost 6 months, and we haven't. So the ad hoc process isn't getting us there, and eventually it's going to come to a discussion among council members and a vote to keep it the same or a vote to make an amendment, one way or the other. That's what's going to happen. So I think it's kind to be able to discuss it a couple of times in the ad hoc process, but at the end of the day, it's a motion that should come forward to council And either we vote to keep it the same or we vote to make a slight change.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Waring. Mayor Teckenberger, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond with another comment or two. Councilmember Waring, you used the example of the Budget Ad Hoc Committee. And you're right, at the end of the day, it is just advisory. And the budget as proposed to council is my budget.
Right.
I would just, case in point, you know, when we had the discussion about a millage increase versus using LOST, I was listening, you know, and I got the consensus of the committee and brought that consensus to council. I didn't agree with the consensus this year. And yeah, I could have, you know, I'm going to bring the way I wanted it anyway. And it could have gotten voted down on the floor and all like that. You know, part of governance is, you know, is the art of the possible, right? And trying to move things along. So that's the spirit that I try to conduct myself. As I've said, I can't recall one time that a council member expressed to me, you know, Mayor, I really want to be on this committee, and I didn't work it out to have them on that committee. Maybe it happened once in 7 years, but I don't recall that happening. And I always try to listen and ferret out what council members are interested in doing to the extent that it's available, given our committee structure. These committees, however, are not advisory, and we do, with all due respect, have a strong mayor form of government, and I do feel for future mayors and the future operations of the city that the way it's structured now is most appropriate for the conduct of business and the cohesiveness of the administration. So for what it's worth, that's my perspective.
Councilmember Waring.
I respect what you have to say, Mr. Mayor. I just respectfully disagree. Early on in your first term, there was a pay raise proposed for employees through the budget ad hoc process. When you proposed your budget to council, this is before Councilman Brady and Ross, Appel, and Bowden were elected. You wanted the pay raise to start July 1. Council disagreed with their budget, and we voted for the pay raise to begin January 1. So through that process, as a strong mayor, I agree, and you came with your recommendation, but the overwhelming majority of council disagreed with that and voted to start that pay raise earlier. So those type things happen. What you're talking about, I believe you that no council member has come to you in 7 years. But it happened on the floor of last Tuesday's meeting when Councilman Seeking brought those ideas, which were very good ideas, I thought. And in the newspaper, he kind of got beat up from bringing it at the last minute. I thought at the time, and I still feel that was unfair for anybody who comes with a good idea to try to help the budget process. Now, he did in fact have the right to join those budget meetings, but he was taken off the committee. And he was taken off by you. He had been on the ad hoc budget process for a number of years and has contributed significantly to that process. He's a good man. He comes with good ideas. I tell you what, though, when he pointed out Tuesday that he was taken off, I didn't even realize he was taken off. Okay, the committee, until he said it at that moment. And this is why, because you have invited all council members, you know, if they want to join in on the Zoom meetings. But the process of taking him off for whatever reason, gave him the inclination or the feeling that he was not part of that committee. So I guess he'd let the ad hoc committee move forward. But I will say this, had we known those ideas, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, I think some of those ideas would be a part of that budget that we're going to vote on Tuesday. So I am not saying you don't do your best efforts. I believe you do your best efforts. I think there's a better process out there. So at the end of the day, it's the strong mayor. But when it comes to the actual process, it comes down to a majority rules. So, and if that were the case, there would be no need for council because it would just be your way and your way only. So there are times when we had to kind of step in and make corrections, and it's already recorded.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bowden, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I would support taking a vote to affirm the mayor's choices as long as we've got, a sort of backup process to allow things to continue if there is disagreement. So it's not a messy floor fight. It would just be go back to the drawing board and work on it. So, if we want to report out something like that, I think it's a fine idea. I don't think it's as messy as we tend to worry about it. Talked about that IOP system, and that sounds like a disaster. So anything more efficient than that, certainly a good idea. But I would support having some role in the process.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. And I think just to address Councilmember Waring's point, I do think, and I agree with Councilmember Waring that I think the mayor recommending a chair and vice chair and composition of the committees for the organization of council, is within his executive prerogative. But I would disagree, Councilmember Waring, that on the ad hoc process, the nature of an ad hoc committee is the executive's prerogative because they are advisory in nature as opposed to standing. I would say that is his prerogative to do. But like I said, I do think some language around, the recommendation of chair and vice chair and the members of a standing committee to council for its own organization. I do think that should be something that council votes on. It would follow precedent for other deliberative bodies as well in terms of voting on their own organization. So I would be in favor of that. And, to your point, Councilmember Bowden, I think one way or another, this committee should recommend something out, whether it is negative or positive, and would like to see that come for the next rules committee. If legal has time between now and the next rules committee meeting before the second committee or the second council meeting in January, if legal thinks that they can do that.
Mr. Chairman, the mayor had his hand up, but just for clarification, the standing committee appointments and the mayor pro tem appointment, those come at the first meeting of the year. So those will be on the January 10th meeting. And the code amendment is an ordinance, so it's going to have to go to at least 2 meetings before it's ratified. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no. That's fine. I didn't realize that I wasn't sure, since we would be adopting the rules of council at, I believe we had talked about the second committee meeting or the second council meeting in January.
Yes, correct. I thought you were talking about the standing committee. Yeah, those come up at the first meeting in January.
So if I'm reading that correctly, if we propose any ordinance change, it would come after the election of November 2023, and it would be in effect for the subsequent seating of council after that.
2024.
Correct. Is that correct? Yes, Councilmember Waring.
I disagree. I think 7 votes of council can all. Well, I'm sorry, the mayor had his hand up before.
Yep, you're correct, Councilmember. Sorry, Councilmember or Mayor Tecklenburg.
Yeah, I apologize. I need to run after making one more comment. I got a 6 o'clock commitment. But I did want to just share for the record that the ad hoc budget committee is comprised of chairmen of various committees. And so I hadn't been appointing individuals to that committee. It's by virtue of being chair of various committees that you are on the advisory ad hoc committee. So, for example, Councilmember Gregory is on by virtue of being the Ways and Means Committee chairman, and that chairmanship is one that, frankly, I about every 2 years or 3 years move around, and let different council members experience being part of the Ways and Means Committee. So while you're chairman of the Ways and Means, you're also on the ad hoc. In the case of Councilmember Seekings, he was formerly the chair of the Audit Committee, and Councilmember Appel became chair of the Audit Committee. So just by virtue of that is what predicated the change in the composition of the ad hoc budget committee. So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know, but it wasn't like, I removed somebody from the committee. It's just by virtue of those chairmanships.
Okay.
And then Councilmember Waring, sorry to go back to you.
I forgot my point. So
Sorry.
no, it's not a problem. No, it's just listen. I mean, when we got talent around the table, in particular, coming out of pandemic budgets and the work we all put in, and when I say we, I'm talking all 13, obviously staff included, to get through those 2 pandemic years. And it looks like I said, when I hear good ideas, I don't care who gets the credit. I just like to see them implemented because it helps all of us. It helps all the citizens. Anyway, so, but my point was that what the clerk was saying, it was that because I guess in time, whatever we do will take effect in 2024. I disagree with that. I think with a vote of council, a majority of council, we actually can have that take place today. I don't believe that once 7 votes of council, as a matter of fact, I think we have Attorney General's opinion on that already. That actually happened during Mayor Rowley's administration. 7 votes of council, we can amend any ordinance in here.
Yeah.
7 votes of council. So just because the calendar doesn't allow the ad hoc committee to meet and have 2 readings of the ordinance, or 3 readings of the ordinance, second and third being done the same time. So I just all due respect, Ms. Cook, I think I disagree with you on that. I think should the majority of council say so, we can amend those rules.
And Mr. Chairman, so just for clarification,
Madam Clerk.
that was only related to the standing committee issues because the standing committee appointments, because they come forward at the beginning of the year. So it's just that one item. So, if y'all change that, we would either not move forward with the appointments at our first meeting in January and we would hold that, or anyway, that it would not be decided by the time those appointments come forward is what I was trying to say for 2023, unless, y'all want to hold those.
Well, Councilmember Belton has his hand up, and then I'll go to you.
I would just suggest that maybe somebody make a motion on this so we can even determine whether it's going to come to the floor in a council meeting, and then legal can certainly work with that. And I'm sure Councilmember Waring wouldn't hesitate to give him a call and put in his suggestion.
I'm going to go back to Councilmember Waring, and then Mayor Tokenberg, I saw you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually agree with Councilmember Bowden. I think we can discuss this one. I think we put a lot of discussion in this one. I think we bring it to the floor, and if council votes for it, then prior to those appointments, hopefully, if council votes for it, we'll have some discussions between now and the first meeting in January. The council, even if we give first reading, I think there'll be discussion. There may be a moot point by the time the slate is chosen. But anyway, So I agree with moving it forward.
All right, Mayor Tecklenburg, and then I'll entertain a motion after that.
Okay.
Nope, and the motion y'all are considering is what we were discussing about ordinances coming from council members?
I thought we talking about this issue right here with the standing committees with, I thought we already decided. Didn't we, Mr. Chairman, we voted on that.
Yes, that's,
ordinance. Yeah.
yes, that's correct. The original item on the agenda was voted and adopted unanimously.
Well, I guess I'd raise a point of order.
Go ahead.
This matter wasn't advertised on our agenda. I don't know that we can take action on it and send it to city council next week.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Waring, and then I'm going to rule on the point of order.
okay, Mayor Tecklenburg, do you really think that's good for the order to pull that issue to try and keep it from coming to council?
I'm fine with the issue coming to council, but it should follow our normal process. And as you've stated, any matter properly brought to council can be acted upon with a majority vote, unless it's an emergency thing. So you're absolutely can come forward to council in appropriate fashion and be voted on it most any time.
But this is old business. This committee, this ad hoc committee has already discussed this previously at previous meetings. I brought it up.
But because and Councilman Waring, thank you. Because this was not advertised on the agenda, I would tend to side with Mayor Tecklenburg on this, that the committee moving forward on it, I would deem to be out of order just because the public did not have a chance to see it. However, to place it on the next ad hoc rules committee agenda to then move forward to council, I believe is the appropriate way forward, and I would rule Mayor Tecklenburg's motion in order.
But
yes, Councilman Waring.
Councilman Bowden had his hand up before.
Yep, you're correct. Councilman Bowden.
I was just going to ask if we could vote to add it to the agenda like we would at a council meeting.
I think there has to be an exigent circumstance, but I know that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no,
Councilmember Waring has requested that the discussion be on council communications at the upcoming council meeting for Tuesday. So it will come up before council for council to discuss on Tuesday.
And that is within the purview and rules that we have previously adopted. So I think that is in order. But to be able to vote on it currently, I would rule that out of order. Yes, Councilman Waring.
Councilmember Saccharin had his hand up earlier. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll defer to Councilman Saccharin.
Saccharin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is a moot point at this point, because if we're not going to take the vote now, I'm good. I can have that greater discussion when we get to council. I'm good. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Councilman Waring.
No, I don't want to take away from your purview as chair. I do believe this comes on the old business because it was previously discussed. It's in the minutes. This should be allowed under old business. But anyway, you're the chair and that's your purview. So
yes, and thank you, Councilman. And if it had been listed on the agenda, I would have no problem with it, but because it was not advertised, I do have to rule that out of order. Is there any other items up for discussion? All right, if not, we will get the next agenda meeting or the next ad hoc rules committee meeting scheduled, and we will be able to report everything out to council. So I appreciate everyone's time tonight. I'm sorry we went over the hour that was scheduled, but I greatly appreciate the discussion.
Discussion was good, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.